We've received several questions about what to do to create a successful retirement, as well as asking me to share problems and questions about the die broke concept, which I actually refer to as the retire broke. But we're going to cover die broke and retire broke in a different episode. The concept of die broke, which I absolutely love, they ask several really good questions. What I've found, though, in reality is that the people that love that concept of die broke should really not be doing it. And the ones that should be wouldn't even consider it. So it's kind of interesting. But the whole concept is that you basically spend your money during your lifetime. And I would love the concept if we knew when we were going to die. The problem is because we don't, and if we overspend, we're going to end up without money. It can be disastrous. So I'll share that in a future episode. But today we're diving into 5 different insights and mistakes people discover too late. In the blog, I share 6 steps on how to plan for retirement, as well as a guide of what you can do at each stage in your 20s through your 70s. Now, if you have a question for the podcast, feel free to go to themillionaireinsider.com/WIOP-ask. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. If you need help on your next best financial steps so you can secure your financial future and create a retirement you love, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Today's free resource is our retirement plan checklist. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. This resource is basically an A to Z guide for helping you create a successful retirement. It's going to provide you the insight you need so you can secure your retirement and not have to worry about money. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/63. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. The information we provide is not intended to replace any specialist, and it's not intended to offer investment, estate, financial, tax, retirement, or any planning or healthcare advice. All participants agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. So let's dive into the 5 retirement mistakes people discover oftentimes too late. I thought this was appropriate because there's obviously mistakes you can make. There's obviously problems you can have in retirement. But the ones that concern me the most are ones that when a person figures out it's going on, it's often too late. So I want to dive into these. And some of these are not so common, but hopefully you'll see the advantage. So the first one is not loving or even liking yourself. Now you're going, what? But just bear with me for a minute. You're going to be spending a lot of time with yourself once you're not working. So it's a really good idea to get to know that new best friend. There's no fun when you're living with your enemy. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, this can happen with a partner or a spouse. Right now, gray divorce is at an all-time high. In fact, gray divorce, which is 50, 55, 60 years or older, is the highest group as far as divorces. And what some of the research points to, which makes sense, is the fact that people, when they're couples, when they're forced to spend time together, realize they really don't have anything in common. It was fine when one was working and they weren't around each other all the time. But now that they're forced to be together, it's a problem. And we saw that even in COVID. So it's something to just be aware of, whether it is your partner, your spouse, or yourself. You got to get in tune with it. Now, we're talking about yourself because what I find sometimes happens in retirement with people who've never really quieted down, they're on the go, obviously I deal with and have dealt with a lot of millionaire entrepreneurs, is that now all of a sudden they're kind of forced to, spend more time alone. They're not surrounded by other people, so they don't have those distractions. And it can be a challenge. A large part of this is just getting your emotions and your primal toddler brain in check. And it really requires that you start identifying what you really like to do, what you like about yourself, maybe traits you don't like that you want to improve on. But the sooner you can start working on that, the better. Because what ends up happening if you don't is that you're going to be miserable. It's kind of like you're spending time with somebody you don't really like. If you need to get counseling or therapy, I really encourage you to do that. It's one of the best things I've ever done is to get a therapist. Having a therapist, a lot of times they're just able to identify things or pinpoint things or even help you embody your emotions. Because what I find with a lot of successful people is that something happens and we look at it, we might even think about it, and we go right from the thinking right down to the action to fix it. And what we miss is the feeling. It's so fascinating. That can work real well when you're on the go all the time. But when all of a sudden you have a lot of time on your hands and you're kind of forced to deal with situations that maybe you haven't had to pay attention to in your career, it can be a problem. There's just nothing fun about a miserable retirement. And I also think that when you look at a lot of the deaths that occur at retirement, people go, 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 go. They're so busy. They've got so much going on. And then all of a sudden they go to retire and they have all this time on their hands. So it's important that you identify not only what you want to improve on yourself, so you really start liking and loving yourself, but also how you want to spend your time. If you look at cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, it proves that what we think about a situation is going to determine how we feel. Now, a lot of people think it's a situation, and I typically find that especially people who blame something on a situation. So I just want you to start identifying when something happens and you want to make sure and you look at it from a factual standpoint, like factual, this happened. Then what I want you to do is I want you to identify what are you feeling about it or what are you thinking about it? Now, it's really interesting. If you talk to most therapists, they will say that before your prefrontal cortex is developed, a lot of people feel it first. Even though scientifically people will say you think it first, a lot of people don't believe they think it first. They feel it. Don't get hung up on whether you feel it first or think it first, but the key is where do you go from there? So let's say you feel it, but you don't really allow it to pass through you or really feel the emotions. You just go right to the action line. Or you might be somebody that goes to the thinking line and you keep ruminating over it. You just keep obsessing over it. So just be clear on that and you want to work on that. All right, the second one is an out of control or unintegrated conscious and subconscious mind. So we referred a little bit to the primal brain in the first step, but the primal brain is where our subconscious impulse driven desires come from. And it's like when we feel like doing something or don't feel like doing something, and it can be disastrous in retirement. Like you have to get that under control, or what you'll find happening in retirement is you're overspending, you're over drinking, you're overeating, you're doing all the things that you shouldn't be doing. And what you want to do is you want to get that prefrontal cortex, which is more your rational, reasonable brain in the game. And you want to align that with your primal brain. If you want to achieve any goal, the two have to be in alignment. But your prefrontal cortex will help you create a plan and then stick to it. But if your primal brain is leading the show and you don't save, you're overspending, or maybe you abdicate money decisions because you don't enjoy it or don't want to do it. When you have an out of control primal brain, it equates to disaster. We've seen probably about 12 people who have inherited serious money, like $100 million. And most of these have been people we know of. No, thank goodness they're not been our clients, but they would never be our clients, right? Because they don't want to hear what a financial planner would do. They want to do what they feel like doing. In a few short years, they have no money. What ends up happening is if you are pre-retirement or in retirement and your brain's out of control, what you're going to find is that you feel good when you're spending, right? And you don't think about the ramifications until all of a sudden you don't have enough money. Or you have a partner or a spouse who's got that issue and you don't know about it. And they're spending more money than you've got to cover. And before you know it, you're in a real financial pickle. So just don't let that be you. Regardless of how much money you have, it is finite. And yes, I believe completely in manifestation, but you've got to combine that with practical practices that work. Don't let this be one of the mistakes you make. What I see and what I've seen in my research and what I hear from other people is the fact that when this mistake pops up and people realize it, it's almost always at the point where it's really almost too late. So just be aware of it. Number 3 is not knowing how much money you need. Now, this one seems so simple, but I cannot tell you how many people retire and then they tell me, oh, I'm so worried about running out of money. And I just start asking a few questions of, well, what caused you to retire? Well, I just no longer wanted to work. Oh, okay. Well, that is one option. And then when you start listening to them, it was like they did not know from the get go how much money they needed or how much money they could spend. What I find is a lot of people will share, well, I thought this was what I needed. Before you retire, you can't be thinking about what you think you're going to need. You've got to know beyond a shadow of a doubt what you need. And then you got to plan for some contingencies. I strongly recommend you do a test drive on your retirement. Take a 6-month sabbatical and see what it's like. Do you enjoy it? Can you live on the amount of money you're earmarking and still save some so that you've got extra? You're not always living paycheck to paycheck. Do you need to adjust your plan? All those things you want to know before you retire, because if you don't, my friends, there's just nothing fun about that. Number 4 is not confirming you enjoy being retired. We dove into this a little bit in number 1. This is what I find. Getting comfortable with yourself is going to help a lot because if you don't like yourself, it's a problem. There's personalities that come across as really confident, like overconfident and over gregarious and over this and over that. And at the core level, if you talk to any expert, psychologist, or even psychiatrist, a lot of them will share that at the core level, they really don't like themselves. So just because somebody comes across as being really confident and, whenever you're around them, they're always boastering and they're always sharing how great they are and all that, at the core level, they've got serious self-esteem problems. And unfortunately, some of those people end up taking their life. I mean, it's not a pretty scenario. Hopefully that's not you. And if it is, you've got to get help. What I want you to do is make sure that you, first of all, enjoy yourself, because that's the first issue of why oftentimes people don't enjoy retirement. But then secondly, really getting clear on how you're going to spend your time. As I mentioned, gray divorce is the highest divorce rate in the country. People go from working 24/7 to retiring to golf, hike, or whatever their heart desires, and it sounds good until they've done it every day. And now they're like, oh my gosh, this is not that much fun. For some people, it is. Others, it just becomes a nightmare. So you got to determine how you're going to spend your time, where you're going to live, what you're going to do. And then ideally, you want to coordinate that with your partner or your spouse to make sure that you're compatible. Make sure that they're not planning on giving you this honey-do list that you're like, I'm not retired, so all I can do is chores around the house. Hopefully my husband's not listening to this. He wants to retire and we're now talking about letting him retire. Fortunately, it's a joint decision. We're in discussions. I mean, he'll ultimately have to make that final decision. And I want him to if he wants to. He's talking about taking classes at the community college. He's going to be the general contractor on our new home. So he's got things that are be going on. All right, number 5, Dying Broke. Now, as I mentioned, that book is so popular and it has some great questions. But it's funny because people who should take note and spend more money don't, and the ones that shouldn't love it and are following it. It's just terrifying. And I have seen this in so many situations. Somebody says, oh, I love that concept. You ask them a few questions and all I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, they're going to end up broke. As I mentioned, I think a more realistic concept of die broke is really retire broke. The book is about spending your dollars while you live. And while it can be a great concept, you got to know when you're going to die. And most people don't. If you don't know when you're going to die, let's face it, who does? And you get it wrong, it is devastating. So if you're following that philosophy, just be aware. Make sure you've got enough lifetime income that you can never run out of money. I would just say, if you want a bonus one, it would be that. Make sure you've got guaranteed income. You can have guaranteed income where you have a guaranteed amount of money you get for life. And then if you become incapacitated or you need long-term care, some of them double the benefit. There's all types of plans. What you have to do is look at your situation, hire a qualified advisor because they'll be able to help you look at all the options and then make a decision that works for you. All right, so there you have it. So let's recap on the 5 retirement mistakes people discover too late. The first one is not enjoying yourself, not liking spending time with yourself. An out of control or unintegrated conscious or subconscious mind, not knowing truly how much you need, not thinking about how much you need, but knowing it, not confirming you are going to enjoy retirement and following the die broke popular book and not taking into account when you're actually going to die. Oh, it can be devastating. What I really encourage you to do when it comes to retirement is do a test run. You want to do a test run for a lot of reasons. 1, to confirm that you like yourself. 2, to make sure you know how much money you need and that you're not going to run out of money. That you've just kind of, you probably just wouldn't go buy a car and say, this is the car I'm going to buy, right? You're only going to have that car for 2 to 10 years. Retirement's going to last a long time. So before you sign up for it, make sure you do a test run and that it's something you really want. You'll be so glad you did. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for next step finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Bau, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.